Janice Dickinson claims she is the world's first supermodel, but the price was heavy. The wild queen of runways was actually a child broken by her father's abuse. From cocaine-filled nights at Studio 54 to Bill Cosby's rape, she lived through every hell. Her beauty was a curse, her body a battlefield. Welcome to Iconic Lives. Today we decode the scream behind that plastic mask and Hollywood's dirtiest secrets. If you are ready, let's start right now. Born in Brooklyn, her home was not a nest but a torture chamber. Her father, Ray, was a monster who abused little Janice both physically and sexually. Her mother became an accomplice by remaining silent. Janice grew up with her father screaming, "You will never be anything." She took refuge in mirrors to escape. Her beauty was a shield to protect herself from her father's violence, but that black hole in her soul would later be filled with hard drugs and sex. In the 70s, modeling agencies laughed at her. Too ethnic, too lippy, they said. It was the era of blondes. But Janice never gave up. When Wilhelmina Cooper discovered her, she created an earthquake in fashion. She claimed to invent the term supermodel, and no one could object. She took over Vogue covers, earning thousands a day. She climbed to the peak to spite her father, but that peak was windy and Janice was about to lose her balance. New York's legendary Studio 54 was her second home. She was the guest of honor at parties with Andy Warhol, Grace Jones, and Mick Jagger. Champagne flowed like water. Cocaine was served on silver trays. Janice was the high priestess of this temple of hedonism. Drugs were the perfect medicine to numb childhood traumas. She walked like a goddess on the runway, but was shaking backstage looking for the next dose. Her glittering life was actually a chemical illusion. She used her sexuality like a weapon. Hollywood's most famous men passed through her bed. Mick Jagger, Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty. These names were not lovers. They were trophies. Janice tried to prove her worth by getting the world's most desired men to spite her father. But there was no love in these relationships, only lust, ego, and emptiness. Waking up with a different celebrity every morning never soothed the deep loneliness in her soul. In 1982, she lived the darkest night of her life in Lake Tahoe. America's Dad. Bill Cosby drugged her under the pretext of offering a role. Janice was raped while unconscious. When she woke up, her pajamas were removed and there was semen between her legs. No one would believe her back then. Cosby was untouchable. Janice kept this terrible secret inside for years. She stayed silent, fearing he would ruin me. This rape shattered her soul, which was already broken. The Cosby incident deepened Janice's drug and alcohol addiction. The humiliation she felt that night reminded her of her father's abuse. Once again, she was betrayed by a male figure she trusted. When she wanted to tell this event in her book years later, she was silenced by publishers and lawyers. Cosby's lawyers threatened to label her a liar. Janice died again every single day while watching her rapist laugh on national television. Her relationship with Sylvester Stallone in the 90s ended with a huge scandal. Janice got pregnant and claimed the child was Stallone's. The Rocky star believed this and was with her at birth. However, the DNA test revealed the truth. The father was her ex-boyfriend, Michael Birnbaum. Stallone felt betrayed and left her immediately. This event cemented Janice's manipulative and unreliable woman image. She found chaos again while looking for love, and lost again. Aging was scarier than death for Janice. Beauty was her only capital, so she started going under the knife. Facelifts, Botox, breast implants. Plastic surgery became her new drug. As her face changed, that old natural beauty disappeared and was replaced by an artificial mask. This addiction was an effort to silence her father's "you are ugly" voice. Every surgery was to close a wound in her soul, but in reality it was only hardening her outer shell. When Tyra Banks made her a judge, Janice became the evil woman for the new generation. She made ruthless criticisms of young models, making them cry. "You're fat, you're short, you're talentless, These words were actually the expression of her own inner voice. She remembered how harsh the industry treated her and reflected the same harshness. She had become the most hated woman on TV, but this hatred made her the ratings queen. She was show material now. In programs like Celebrity Rehab and Surreal Life, Janice's collapse was broadcast live. She told her traumas crying in front of Dr. Drew. Viewers consumed her pain like entertainment. Drunken fights, nervous breakdowns, and strange mimics she made with her plastic face. She was no longer a supermodel, she was a circus animal. While the media accused her of madness, she was actually screaming for help. The ugliest face of fame was embodied in her life. She had earned millions of dollars, but her spending was uncontrolled. Luxury clothes, plastic surgeries, and debts. She announced bankruptcy in 2013. The woman who was once on the cover of Vogue had become unable to pay her rent. Tax debts and unpaid aesthetic bills bent her neck. This financial collapse was proof of how wasteful and disorderly a life she lived. Her fall from the peak to the bottom was completed both financially and spiritually. In 2016, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. This was a turning point for her. She had used her body like an object for years, battered it with drugs and knives. Now that body was rebelling against her. The chemotherapy process, hair loss and weight loss were a huge trauma for her. However, Janice chose to live this war in front of the cameras too. She turned even her illness into a show, but this time she managed to arouse pity and respect in the audience. Years later, with the Get Out Me Too movement, other victims of Bill Cosby emerged. Janice finally testified in court. "He killed me that night," she said. Cosby going to jail was delayed justice for her. Those who called her a liar for years were silent. This victory was the most important part of Janice's healing process. She was no longer just a victim, but a strong survivor. She finally threw off the shame her father and Cosby had left on her soul. Her relationship with her own children was also turbulent. Her son Nathan grew up in his mother's chaotic life. Although Janice tried to be a good mother, her own traumas and narcissism often got in the way. Instead of protecting her children from the media, she sometimes pulled them into this circus. But as she aged, she tried to make up for her mistakes. Her children forgave her as they understood how hard a life she lived. Family became her last refuge. Despite being over 60, Janice did not settle down. She continued to share filtered photos on social media and kiss her young husband. "I am not dead. I am here," she was screaming. Although critics called her plastic grandma, she did not care. Fame addiction was as strong as drugs. She felt she would disappear when the lights went out. That's why she continued to write her name in headlines at every opportunity, every scandal, and never stopped. In an interview, she said, "If I lived my life again, I would do everything differently." She wanted to erase her father's abuse, Cosby's rape, and years full of drugs. But at the same time, she protected her pride by saying, "I am Janice Dickinson. I am a warrior." Her regrets and victories were intertwined. She did not let Hollywood chew and spit her out. She got stuck in its throat. The price of her survival was the callousing of her soul. Janice Dickinson was the woman who broke the rules of the fashion world. She paved the way for ethnic models, created the concept of supermodel. But her legacy is not just photos. It is also her stance against harassment and her struggle with addiction. She was a flawed hero. She showed us how dangerous fame is, how temporary beauty is, and how permanent traumas are. Her story is not a glittering magazine cover, but a novel written in blood and tears. Is Janice Dickinson a fallen angel or a survivor warrior? Maybe both. She walked out of hell in high heels. Although the plastic surgery on her face cannot hide the wounds in her soul, she managed to make her scream heard. As iconic lives, today we witness the dark and wild journey of the world's first supermodel. Beauty is sometimes a blessing, sometimes a curse. For Janice, it was definitely a war. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.